All right, so this is the latest revelation. We, as everybody knows, we weren't on yesterday, and that turned out to be a huge blessing as far as I'm concerned. What I'm understanding now and realizing is that there are no mistakes, that we are in the prophetic period, uh, most certainly, of the tail becoming the head and us experiencing nothing but the up position. All right. Only. So
That's awesome.
we need to realize it. There are no mistakes. Everything now is turning out, as I'm experiencing, as a blessing. And I want to thank the sisterhood, especially that's on here, that have taken the suggestion to heart to begin to bless themselves, to begin to bless their immediate families, and bless this process. Because most certainly, uh, and I'm speaking from personal experience, we are feeling and experiencing the results of that, and it is profound. So, what I want to do is share. Again, we were off yesterday, but it turned out to be a tremendous blessing for us. And as I explained briefly to Nasik when we talked today, that we are in a very intense process of calibration in terms of aligning with this holistic perspective that is necessary. And we are prepared and equipped to take quantum leaps in terms of our vibratory frequency, in terms of our consciousness level. Now, I think in terms of this holistic perspective that we're seeking to aligning ourselves with. So
That's great. That's great.
that's enough of an introduction. We're going to get right into it. And this uh, particular session I've titled Finding Eber or Eber, the Wandering Hebrew. And this is going to hopefully um, give us a powerful template to understanding exactly who and what we are, Amaria, and who and what we are not. And this is going to require us to lay aside much of what it is that we were trained, entrained, indoctrinated to believe, programmed to
Wow.
believe. So
Mm.
we're going to go on this little journey, and I hope everybody can conceptualize this. Now, see, we need the big picture.
Got to have the big picture.
We have to have the big picture. We have been affected for such a long time because our perception based on training and programming was what I call episodic. We think and function in fragmented episodes. And again, we struggle with getting a comprehensive, holistic, singular perspective on many of the aspects of reality that are necessary. So Finding Eber or Eber, the wandering Hebrew, intuitively distinguishing between dominant gene types, traits, and behavioral characteristics, and recessive gene types, traits, and behavioral characteristics. Again, finding Eber or Eber, the wandering Hebrew, intuitively distinguishing between dominant gene types, traits, and behavioral characteristics, and recessive gene types, traits, and behavioral characteristics. What you're going to find out that the ability to do that is the bottom line. It is fundamental in understanding the true nature of reality and making an intuitive distinction between the illusion, the simulated reality, uh, and the true nature of reality and the true nature of our being, the true nature of our nature. And this is summed up in the scripture passage, for the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. He goes to the nature, the divine perspective, the holistic perspective, looks at the nature of a thing, to the heart of it, and not just to the surface. We have to develop that piercing, that vision, Amari, that pierces beyond the surface, that pierces into the deep recesses to begin to see and to discern and to intuit the true nature of things. Two nations are in thy womb, and two genetically distinct types of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be genetically stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. This sets the framework, again, in the basis of our understanding. This is going to underscore everything that we talk about today. We have to keep those two things in mind, that we are looking as we take this journey through history to find the wandering Hebrew, to find Eber, the wandering Hebrew. We must keep in mind that there will always exist two genetically distinct types of people that we're looking at. Now, history might record this people under the same rubric and give them the same title as Israelite or Hebrew or whatever group that you're looking at. But we must understand this idea of two genetically distinct types of people existing where? In one situation, in one country, in one tale, in one legend, in one narrative. And we have to be able to have the ability to intuitively distinguish between dominant traits, types, and behavioral characteristics and recessive traits, types, and behavioral characteristics. We good? All right. Definition of a Hebrew. Listen carefully. Traditionally from an ancestral name Eber or Eber, but probably literally, listen, one from the other side, perhaps a reference to the River Euphrates, or perhaps simply signifying, listen, immigrant. I want you all to really pay attention, write that down, immigrant. From Eber, region on the other or opposite side. Write down the word opposite, opposing. The initial H was restored in English from the 16th century. Very important when we see, and now see, you've noticed this as well, this period of time from the 12th to about the 18th century is really important. 18th, 19th century is really important because a lot
Right.
of things were being set up for this period of enslavement and captivity in the Americas. All right. The initial H was restored in English from the 16th century as a noun from the 12th century. Here we go. The Hebrew language. So
Wow.
this is where we often get tripped up because it didn't always mean that. All right? Didn't always mean a language, Nasi.
I hear you.
The language is going to fit in. But again, here's a move in the 12th century to attach it as a noun or to convert it as a noun into meaning a language. And we're going to find out that that could be very, very, very deceptive, very tricky. The late 14th century, in reference to persons originally a biblical Jew or an Israelite. Genesis 4, Genesis 4, 11 through 17. And I want everyone to listen very carefully to these scripture references because this is going to tie it in to the definition that we just gave. Genesis 4, 11 and 17. And a couple of sessions ago, Nasik had a revelation that he got that ties into this in terms of viewing Cain and Abel as we view Esau and Jacob. As the older, Cain and Esau representing dominant gene types, traits, and behavioral characteristics, and Abel and Jacob representing, Cain and Esau representing the recessive gene types, traits and behavioral characteristics, and Jacob and Abel representing the dominant gene types, traits, and behavioral characteristics. We clear?
We could.
All right. And now, so we know that Cain, the elder, slew Abel, the younger. He rose up and killed him. And the Lord says, we pick it up in verse 11, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth up to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, there's that word till, Nasi.
Right.
It shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. Let's go back to the definition of Hebrew and Eber, one from the other side. An immigrant. A region on the other or opposite side. Are you all hearing me?
Come on.
We're talking about finding Eber, the wandering Hebrew. This is our first indication of a wanderer, a fugitive, a vagabond in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. Live by the sword, you die by the sword. And the Lord said unto him, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Very important verse coming up here, because it's going to come in later as a certain identifying mark of this recessive gene type, and in identifying Eber, or the Hebrew. The word vagabond is the word nude. It means to wander, look, to move to and fro, to wander aimlessly, to take flight, to cause to wander aimlessly. Now we go back. What happened to the Hebrews according to the narrative, according to the allegorical narrative, when they came out of Egypt? Did they take a straight path?
They wandered.
They wandered for 40 years, correct?
Correct.
They were vagabonds. They were fugitives. The word aberrant, nasi, means wandering from the usual course. Also,
Okay, talk.
Go ahead.
No, I said talk to me. Go ahead.
Also, differing somewhat from a group in which it is placed. There were two types in the womb, placed in the womb, correct?
Correct.
And one differed from the overall type, dominant and recessive. Recessive being the aberrant, meaning to wander, to stray, to roam. Now this is a behavioral characteristic as well. I want y'all to hear this. To rove, to roam. And it says, see the word air. Now it's going to seem like we're switching, but we're not switching.
Yeah, this got to be very clear here, Eitai, because this is we have to take our time right here, because this is one of the conundrums, so to speak, you know, conundrum,
Come on.
conjuring back, and I've been dealing with this whole thing right here.
Correct.
So take time and make sure that we clear as we move with this language here, okay?
Absolutely. So what we've done is we've connected the word Eber in Hebrew and its meaning to the word aberrant.
Okay.
The word aberrant. And we've made a distinction between dominant behavioral traits, Cain rising up and killing Abel,
Okay.
and then becoming a wandering vagabond, a fugitive.
Right.
And this aspect of, in Hebrew, of being an immigrant, that is somebody that has newly come into an established place, right?
Right.
That is from the other side. Very important.
Now, Eitai, this is Cain you talking about here, right?
I'm talking about Cain and Eber.
Okay, that's right. Okay, good.
All right.
Good.
So
Go ahead.
just follow me. You have to keep in mind now that there are two in one.
Absolutely.
Two types in one womb. And
Absolutely, right.
we can never separate this from ourselves, that there are two types potentially in all of us.
Right.
All
That's the
right?
duality.
There's this duality
Right.
that goes all the way to the molecule and the cell. If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you do understand will only confuse you. I'm going to let you all meditate. As we go through history, we have to understand this idea of supremacy, racism, and especially white supremacy. If you do not have a clear understanding of that it is not just based on the color of your skin. Everything is genetics. It is said that one would be what? Genetically stronger than the other people. This is the source of enmity and the source of controversy historically. If you do not understand that, if you cannot realize that, everything else that you do understand will only throw you into a state of confusion. We clear?
Okay.
Now here it is. The root of racism and white supremacy is fear. It's fear of white genetic annihilation. And we talked about Francis Cress Welson's great work, The Cress Theory of Color Confrontation, in the ISIS Papers, The Keys to the Colors. And as she talks about the Europeans or the Caucasoids, she says that the Europeans are mutants, not like the X-Men. Their existence is a consequence of genetic mutation and environmental adaptation. Now, she takes the tagline of evolution, the theory of evolution. But I would be willing to bet that Francis Cress Welsing understood this idea of not only genetic mutation, the recessive trait in the recessive gene, but also the fact of the grafting of the aberrant man and the creation of the aberrant man by our elders and ancestors. You all with me?
Eitai, may I ask a question here?
Sure.
Are we connecting the aberrant man, the vagabond, the wanderer? Are we connecting them as recessive or dominant?
No, they are recessive. The aberrant
Okay.
man, the Cain, Esau, Eber represent aberrant man because of this quality of being a wanderer. All right. Now we're going to connect. Now, as we go on, allow me to go on and might answer a lot of the questions and clear it up that we have. All right.
Go ahead.
Their existence is a consequence of genetic mutation and environmental adaptation. Albinism is a genetic defect that impairs the production of melanin. That is a recessive trait in melanated people. Albinism is a genetic defect that impairs the production of melanin, the genetic substance that gives color to hair, eyes, and skin. Welsing believes that African albinos, listen, rejected by their parents, alienated from their communities, that means they became wanderers. They became perpetual immigrants. Are you all with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a behavioral trait in ancient communities, and sensitive to the African sun, were forced to do what? Migrate, become immigrants, become vagabonds, become wanderers. This is the aspect that we have to highlight, intuit, and recognize as we take this broad journey through history. Because if we do not keep these things in the forefront of our minds, we will not, or the forefront of our consciousness, we will not be able to intuit these things correctly. The next thing, interbreeding among the exiles led to the birth of the European white race. Well, we know it didn't quite happen like that, but interbreeding was a part of it. Also, it was a genetic procedure that was done that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad called grafting by Yaqub.
Big head science.
They call him the big head scientist. All right. So, further emphasizing this genetic aspect of racism and white supremacy, I have the article by Pat Buchanan where he declares that Europeans are an endangered species. European man is an endangered species. If you do not understand that racism and white supremacy has its basis in the fear of genetic annihilation, and if you're not looking at the history of racism and white supremacy and our experience and not understanding, not realizing that this has to do with our genetic superiority and genetic strength, then you're still in a state of confusion, and you will not be able to intuit the true nature of your existence here, of your purpose, of your intent, and of the times that we currently inhabit. Now, what we must understand is that their world ended just like our ancestors told us in 2012. It did end. This is when they came out with this world population 2012. They targeted that date, which projected population growth or decline of every country and continent between now and 2050. So I'm not going to go through and read this entire thing. I'll just point out the high points. It is said, Nasik, of Esau that he would live by his sword, correct?
Right.
Everything in here is prefaced or placed within a framework of a war, either a world war or an anticipated war. But the important thing is that they're understanding that war accomplishes nothing. Because after the war, it says in March 1939, Britain, now that's an important, Britain is an important country, we'll see later on, gave a war guarantee to Poland, and honoring it did what? Declared war on Germany. That's World War II, correct?
Hey.
Yeah, right.
And he states that was the end of the British Empire. Wasn't that they lost the war? Was it? Because the Allies won that war. And how did the good war, they call it a good war now, see, because their mentality, their behavioral trait is to what? Live by the sword.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did the good war work out for Poland? That's who Britain jumped up to defend, right? Her Jewish population, listen, was largely annihilated.
Wow.
These are Polish Jews, not German Jews. And by some estimates, 3 million Catholic Poles perished. So it affected them on both ends. Poland then endured 4 decades of rule by Polish satraps of the Soviet commissars. VE Day brought something other than victory for the nation for whom Britain went to war. Are y'all seeing this? Their way of life is ending. And it started ending within the last century, actually longer than that, but we're just taking this view. Today, Poland's population is back to 38 million, but on the UN chart, Poland is scheduled to lose 4 million Poles by mid-century, and that don't involve a war. The war that they're concerned with is this genetic war that they are losing to us. Are you all with me?
Okay.
Listen to what he says. While our war party, that's the United States. Y'all see, they can't help but talk in terms of war, in terms of this sword that they have been given prophetically. This is a mentality. This is a behavioral trait that we must recognize when we see it. While our war party debates where to draw the red line against Russia, the UN projects that 10 countries on both sides of that line, Russia, Belarus, the Baltic republics, Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, will together lose 50 million people by mid-century, another 50 million by the end of the century.
Where's your top at? To the thing?
Oh, it's probably in the back or something. But
I didn't see it in there.
Now here it is, now see, family.
Okay.
The fertility rate in those 10 countries is barely 2/3 of what is needed to maintain the existing population. I'm gonna read that again. The fertility rate in these 10 countries is barely 2/3 of what is needed to maintain existing populations. They're dying, you all. They know it. They're dying out. Remarkable. The century following the peaceful end of the Cold War and the liberation of captive nations may witness population losses for Europe that exceed 2 world wars and rival those of the Black Death of the 14th century. Y'all got to let that sink in. I'm telling you, their world is over and they know it. European man is an endangered species. European man is dying out. Y'all see me here saying it. I'm just repeating. Y'all hear me saying it, but I'm just repeating what they're telling you and what they're telling each other. European man is an endangered species. European man is dying out. By 2050, Russia, the 4th most populous nation in 1950, will be the 15th behind Egypt and far behind Congo and Tanzania. The only Western nation, listen, and this is going to bring us back to our study. The only Western nation in the top 14 will be the USA. But most Americans will then trace their ancestry to Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Now you see why they elected Trump, to somehow, against all hope, reverse this trend. It's not going to work. Finally, he said, this is how the world ends. And it's not talking about our world, it's talking about their world, said T.S. Eliot, not with a bang, not with a sword, not with a gun, but a whimper. Like Sothi, he too may have it right. They're resigned to this fact. They know it, and we have to know it. The next session, attempting to write a historical role for the aberrant female. Why the aberrant female? Because from a genetic standpoint, from a gene standpoint, the female carries the mitochondrial DNA. The feminine aspect is important. They understood that because when they started this country, they chose a symbol that they thought would give it longevity. And that symbol was the divine black mother. And they decided to put her in the water in New York Harbor. But of course, they did a ritual. They weren't going to put a black woman up there. They were going to do what? Write the white woman, the aberrant woman, into her history as what? Protector, sustainer, defender. Are you all with me? There's a movie that is coming out on February 23rd of this year, this month, and it is called Annihilation. I mean, they are actually using this term. And the tagline is fear what's inside. Fear what's inside. And they know what is inside of us. That is dominant. That is far superior. Are you all with me? And it's interesting because if you were on the call when I talked about the Achilles heel, there was a controversy that existed there. Netflix was coming out with the movie Troy, and they made a switch. They cast a black man in the role of Achilles, and it caused widespread controversy. Here is another reversal, a ritual that they are putting a white woman and white women in the role that the book by Alex Garland did not cast. Garland's new movie, Annihilation, accused of what? Y'all see it?
Whitewashing, huh?
Whitewashing. If you ever read Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy, you may already know that the lead characters are of Asian descent, and look at this, half white, half American Indian descent. Now, if you don't know your true heritage, you won't connect yourself to that. The original name that they called the Native Americans were Negro.
Yeah.
That was synonymous. Whereas in Annihilation, they will be played by Natalie Portman and Jennifer Jason Leigh, the two whitest girls in America, probably on the planet, respectively. This week, representations from both Media Action Network for Asian Americans and American Indians in film and television have come out to declare the movie to be the latest example of whitewashing. Per MANNA, is called Manna. Alisa Badrishia, the issue is a striking one. She said writer-director Alice Garden is not being true and honest to the characters in the book. He exploits the story, but fails to take advantage of the true identities of each character. Hollywood rarely writes prominent parts for Asian American and American Indian characters, and those roles could have bolstered the careers of women from those communities. Well, the women that she's pointing out, she's saying Asian and American Indian descent. The women that she is talking about and representing are just that, Mongoloids. All right? We're going to understand the history of this. The Indian, the American Indian that we're used to identifying with are Chinese, is a mix between Chinese and lighter skinned or recessive Negroids. All right? Recessive Negroids. It was a intermixing that was done to further what? Obscure our identity. Question: why are the lead characters in the book Annihilation of Asian descent and half white, half American Indian descent? Well, it's very simple, because in November 15th, what year is that? 2012. See, their world ended. They came out with this study that the first Americans were black, according to a BBC documentary. That is Lucia or Luzia, the skull and the face that they reconstructed. And they said until now, which was 2012, family, Native Americans were believed to have descended from what? Asian ancestors who arrived over a land bridge between Siberia and Alaska, and then what? Migrated across the whole North and South America. These Asian people have facial features described as Mongoloid. So when you see the lighter skinned so-called Native Americans, they have Mongoloid features. That is a genetic trait, a genetic phenotype. Are you all with me? We do not understand this. See, if we're only going by the surface, the color of the skin, we'll be lost. We have to go deeper, family. Amaria, we have to know the genetics, or we'll be confused. We'll never come to an understanding of what we truly are. They have very distinct facial features described as Mongoloid. However, skulls dug from the depth equivalent to 9 to 12,000 years ago are very different. Walter Navies, an archaeologist from the University of Sao Paulo, has extensive skull measurements from dozens of skulls, including the oldest of a young woman who has been named Lucia or Luzia. The measurements show that Lucia is anything but a Mongoloid. The next step was to reconstruct the face, and this is what they came out with, and they said the result was surprising. It has all the features of the Negroid face. It is a phenotype. The next article: who came first, the Mongoloids, the Caucasoids, the Negroids, or the Australoids? And this is dated, surprisingly again, or not surprisingly, December 14th, 2014, after 2012, family, where everything ended. They got to reverse it.
Wow.
pre-Columbian America has a new and completely different story to tell. Why? Because y'all's world has ended. It has lost integrity. They got to regroup now. And we have to regroup because we've been entrained and indoctrinated, family, with false information.
Simple as that.
We came up in these school systems and these churches and these educational systems, colleges, whatever have you. We've been exposed to media. I mean, what was popular? You know, when we was coming up, cowboy and Indian stories, right? And like James Baldwin said, we always rooted for whom? The cowboys.
Yeah, cowboy.
Who were wanderers, vagabonds, fugitives, immigrants, those that had crossed over with what? A sword in their hand. The Orthodox textbook version or renditions are still being taught in high school and post-secondary classrooms. The DNA evidence, this is genetics, and a cornucopia of new archaeological discoveries are generating a new revision on the Siberian Mongoloid, that is Asian Mongoloid, peopling the Americas. All right? He makes a statement, you all. I will start with the earliest discoveries that point to Brazil and Topper South Carolina, USA, as being the Eden or the Eden of the Americas.
Wow.
Their world has ended. And so, family, we have to calibrate. We have to align ourselves to this new information. And this information is just not words coming out of my mouth or words on a paper. It is energetic. It is enlivening. It is empowering. It is energizing. And we have to align ourselves with this information. So they talk about the major discovery of Lucia, and we went over that, all right? So I want to show you again something else that he says. He says that Walter Neves of the University of Sao Paulo has stated that the skulls found prior to 7000 BCE are all Negroid, all of them. And all the skulls found after 5000 BC are predominantly Mongoloid. Well, if you've been paying attention, you understand why that is. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us a timeline of about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago when what? The aberrant man was created. So you couldn't have found anything beyond 6,000 or 7,000 years that was Caucasoid, Mongoloid, or any other type of oid, but Negroid. Y'all hearing me?
Yeah.
We fixed this thing and this teaching between a 400 to about approximately 6,000 year period because of that. And the archaeological evidence is proving that. Couldn't have been nothing in no 7,000 year period. Now see, but some brothers and sisters back there.
Yeah.
The evidence suggests that South America was populated first by Africans who were then supplanted, listen, who were then supplanted by Mongoloid descendants through violence. The sword
Wow.
of Esau.
Wow.
The sword of Esau, and assimilated. If we do not have this story, this broad story, this comprehensive, holistic view of history, we're not going to be able to put none of this together. And everything is just going to confuse us, as it has been doing until this very day, correct?
Right. Wow.
So he goes on
Now,
to say,
Eitai,
uh-huh,
again, I have to mention the profundity of the deception, because this book that we are now uncoding, and remember what we say in Revelation, couldn't find no one to open the seal.
that's us.
Now, see, if we go back prior to, there was nobody. There was a particular time that the seal would be open, but we based our understanding on what has preceded where we are now, and we're struggling with that which was programmed in us to accept this here today.
That's
You
correct.
see what I'm saying? And
That's
so by
correct.
doing so, it's very confusing now to try to differentiate what really is, because you're really holding on to that which you have been programmed to believe and accept it, because you don't understand the story. And now that we are beginning to hear everything that we've been taught, we got to let it go.
That's
If you
correct.
don't let it go, you will never ever understand this here.
That's correct.
And it's proven. I mean, they're coming forth and saying, you're hearing too many black men, black women coming forth making these statements. There's nothing else to what. If you don't accept this, you're gonna what? Hold on to the lie and stay confused.
That's correct.
I mean, it's obvious now to me, everything, you can't be afraid to speak it. Other than that, you can't be empowered.
That's correct.
Right.
Continuing on. In the 4th century, Chinese missionaries under the Shang dynasty named Su Shin or Hoshan came to America in search of his people who were in the East, Yi, black Chinese. When the Chinese arrived, they encountered the Olmecs, who had already been living in the land. The
Wow.
Chinese considered the black Olmecs as descendants of the black Chinese Yi people. Hoshan's people, listen, Hoshan's people settled and mixed in with the Olmecs and produced the quote unquote aboriginal. The Olmecs gave the lower kingdom to these aborigines. The aborigines called the land Mushan. Mushan. I want you all to write that down as it sounds. M-U-S-H-A-N. And then put next to it M-U-S-H-A. Then right next to it M-O-S-H-E. Then right next to that M-O-S-E-S or M-O-S-E-S. That's correct. Moshe Mushan. See, we've been looking at this now, see this as people and not as behavioral traits and ideas and symbols.
There you go.
We've been looking at this as historic people, these characters in the Bible. But these are our elders. These are our elders writing down for us in brilliant detail what would happen and who would be involved and when. Now, see,
Yeah.
you had mentioned in Revelations where the book couldn't be opened nor the seals loosed, and the individual John, he said he wept bitterly,
Right.
but it was the ancestors that encouraged him and said, "Don't worry, we got your back." At a certain time in history, we are experiencing this. That book will be open and them seals loosed.
Wow.
The Aborigines all called the land Mushan, which is a combination of the Olmecian, Ashuric, Aramaic word mu. Did I connect it? Aramaic. What is that?
Right.
That's a dialect of Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And this takes us back to the Atlantean and Mu empires, right?
The Atlantean Empire.
Atlantis and Mu.
Uh-huh.
Is everybody with me?
Uh-huh.
That's when the what? The world was a holistic landmass prior to what? The separation during the time of Eber. This is very important. Now, see, we're going to connect all the dots.
Yeah.
The word mu means one, whole, single, holistic.
That's what I'm talking about.
And the Chinese word shan, named after Hu Xin. Did you know that there is a province in China today called Xi'an, and that this is the site of the only Chinese pyramids? We were tower builders. This takes us back. This takes us back to the Tower of Babel, when 11th chapter of Genesis, where everything was one. This story is just going to keep repeating itself throughout history. And if you miss it now, it's your fault. I'm serious.
Eitai,
Cain.
I think we're going to have to reconsider the Tower of Babel. We got to go back now and tie Babel to the language that the sister was talking about. And we're going to have to move the concept of the tower to a pyramid.
Well, that's exactly what it is.
But you say tower, nobody thinks pyramid.
Right. This is just
nobody thinks pyramid.
Right. This is our people were tower builders.
Absolutely.
So look, again, if you miss this and you stay in darkness, it's your fault. Because this thing
here.
Now see, this came together in one day. One day.
Hey, I'm so glad that we activated this and we didn't get on yesterday.
That's right. So Mushan becomes Mishan, and eventually Michian or Mexico. Mexico.
Oh. It's all making sense.
It's getting ready to come together, y'all.
Together.
The Aborigines called themselves Mexicans. Let me ask you, Amaria, you know something called Mexican?
Kane, I'm living in Michigan.
Aha! The Aborigines called themselves Mexicans or Mexicans, and they remixed, listen, They remix with the Olmecs. See, this is why we cannot go by skin color. This mixing and remixing, which the Bible calls what? A mixed multitude, has always been with us, as well as what? These two natures, these two types, these two genetic types. Are you all with me? See, we've been going about this the wrong way. And then
Absolutely the wrong way.
when we can't find it in history, now see, when we can't make the connection, we run and get a DNA test. And we're still confused.
This is really brilliant here.
Which resulted in the sub-tribe called Hopi. Now, you remember, David, this is what we were talking about in terms of the Mayan calendar and the Hopi. This is all connected together with the Hopi, all right? The Hopi clan was taught the religion of the Dogon and given what? And given what? The secrets of the stars. That is that is the holistic language, y'all.
Wow.
The holistic language, again, that Hebrew is based on. So we can't, it was only in the 12th century that they start connecting the Hebrew with the language. That's a distraction. The real language is in us because they're in the stars, and the stars and the constellations, the whole cosmos is within us.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
The Hopi clan was given the religion of the Dogon and the secrets of the stars. That is that holistic language. Several hundred years later, listen, the Hindu East Indians arrived in Mexico. Now we're putting this all together. And they bred, intermixed, intermingled with the Mexicans and produced Mongoloid tribes like the Inuit and Mexico, who did what? Migrated, moved, wandered far north to Canada and Alaska. Those are colder climates. Why? Lack of melanin.
Clear.
Y'all with me?
Mm-hmm.
So here's something else that went on. We should all write down the word Dawes rolls. DAWES. The Dawes rolls. This is entitled Paying to Play Indian. The Dawes rolls and the legacy of the $5 Indians.
Oh, yeah.
The Dawes rolls rife with opportunistic white man and early appropriation. It may be fashionable to play Indian now, but it was also trendy 125 years ago when people paid $5 apiece for falsified documents declaring them native on a native on the Dawes rolls. These so-called $5 Indians paid government agents under the table in order to reap the benefits that came with having Indian blood. Mainly white men with an appetite for land. $5 Indians paid to register on the Dawes roll, earning fraudulent enrollment in tribes along with benefits inherited by generations to come. I'm going to give you all a personal story and experience. Now, when I was in the university, I was trying to register as a Hebrew. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I went through this difficulty in dealing with the individuals there. Everybody else can register. Christians, Seventh-day Adventist. It was one Jehovah's Witness there that had the use of the chapel. One. And he would have a Jehovah's Witness come in and he'd be the only one in there. Christians, of course, Muslims, Sunni, and what's the other type? Whatever, both groups of Muslims, whatever type of Christian you were, you could register. I tried to get something started I had to end up, the rosters gave me that, because I took my classroom, I had Muslims, Rastafarians, Christians, so-called Christians, Messianic Hebrews, as well as Crips and Bloods in there together. But I had to use the Messianic Hebrew spot, or Messianic Christian, I can't remember what it was. I think it was Messianic Hebrews and the Rastafari. They gave it over to me and allowed me to teach. And everybody brought their group in. Also, they had, you could register as a Native American. Nobody else in there could wear headgear. But if you were a Native American, you could wear the bandana around your head. Are y'all with me?
Mm-hmm.
So it was 3 Native Americans all during the time that I was there. The one looked like a big white boy with long hair. They allowed him to wear his hair long. And I had to accept it. I was ignorant at that point. And I said, well, this is how the ones look on TV. There was another one that I played softball with. Now, I see, tremendous athlete. And he looked more like the Native Americans, light skin. But I'm like, he looked just like one of the Puerto Ricans or, the light skinned Dominicans or, whatever.
Right.
And there was another Native American that was right next to me, where we bumped. And I know he was a racist. He was in there making dream catchers. And I had asked him to make a dream catcher for me. He was like, nah, he said, you got to tell me what tribe you're from, and I make it according to that. And, he had the owl feathers and all that kind of stuff. Let me give you all how the ancestors work. Now, where we were at, we were in McKean, Pennsylvania. We was on this hill, see, and there was a forest. We were like right in the middle of a forest. They had a forestry program like that individuals could sign up to. And we would see all kind of things, eagles and feral cats, bobcats, bears, all kind of stuff come through there. But what ran the yard were crows. And we would sit and watch these crows all day. They were the gangsters of the yard. It was a very distinct intelligence that you could not help, but everybody noticed it. There would be a feral cat hiding in the bushes. Here come them crows announcing it to the whole yard and chasing it off, warning the other birds. They ran things. Didn't nothing come. Not a hawk, not an eagle came in there without their permission. So I had a job that took me over to another facility, see, and we, as a group, we would walk over there. They allowed us to walk. So we would walk past the baseball field into this field, and the crows would be over there sometimes. So, I'm talking to the crows. I see the intelligence, I talk to him every day, you know. We was talking to the plants and all that kind of stuff. This is real. So as we're walking over there one day, I see an eagle's feather, big eagle's feather, sticking up perpendicular right in the grass. And the crows are there. And they looking at me and squawking, making me take notice of the eagle feather. I almost walked past it. Then I turned around and I picked it up. I said, oh, this is for me. But being ignorant, I gave it to the brother that was on the baseball team. I said, it must be, the feathers to Native Americans are powerful symbols.
Right,
And the
right,
eagle's
right.
feather was the most powerful. The one Native American told me that. So I just gave it to the Native American brother. And he was like, oh man, I appreciate this. You don't know what this means. This is so powerful. And I told him, I said, yeah, the crows left it. So I tell my bunkie, he said, man, he's a Dominican. He said, man, them crows ain't left you nothing. I said, if you don't think them crows can communicate, I said, watch, I'm going to ask them to leave me another feather there tomorrow in the same spot. Guess what happened?
You
Sticking
kidding, man.
up, sticking up. Now I can get this guy on the call. Sticking up
Wow.
perpendicular, and that's the one I kept. And I have it in a book somewhere here. I'll show it to y'all when I find it. So I
Wow.
go back and tell my bunkie, I say, look, they left me another. No, they didn't. I said, if you don't believe me, you go out there and ask them to leave you one. Guess what? Left him one in the same spot. This was the ancestors telling us that you are the native. I didn't realize it until very recently. You are the
Wow.
Native Americans.
Wow.
Those are your traditions. So it's a true story. I'm gonna get the brother comes on the recordings when he can. The Dominican brother named Vladimir Arias. He'll tell you the exact same story.
Wow.
So
Oh, this is I would say this is more than brilliant because been in this pursuit of this knowledge a long time.
okay,
And in this pursuit, you've always had areas that you continue to research for verification and for clarity and simplicity, but you just didn't find it, so to speak, But what we witnessing now is testimony, verification of cycles of time and the manifestation of the simplicity of this knowledge that has been all around us all the time. We
that's
just
correct.
had eyes and see not,
Right.
ears and not. So that becomes real, real, real now.
Absolutely. This
Yeah,
is a real experience. It is prophetic, it is biblical, it is historic. We're
yeah.
all participating in it. Moving forward. So we talked about the $5 Indian. In 1865, this is what they declare. In 1865, now we know what 1865 is.
Yeah.
African Americans and white Americans were moving into the Midwest, into the Indian and Oklahoma territories. Now you're lying. All vying for the same patch of land they could call their own. I know you're lying because uh, Reconstruction, we were supposed to get what? our own 40 acres and a mule, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But did we ever get it?
No.
It's because of the Dawes Roll. They wrote us out of our own history. They had no intention of giving us anything. That's why you go to look on the reservations now. Do you see any Negroid genotypes? No. You see Mongoloid and Caucasoid. And Donald Trump, if you look at Malkiel, you might be aware of it. He was addressing this when he wanted to open up casinos, but they would only what? In certain territories, uh, licensed to Native Americans. And he said on film, they don't look to me like Native Americans. Y'all need to go look at that video.
Wow.
A land that they can call their own and live out their Jeffersonian view of independence. This Jeffersonian view of independence still plagues us to this day. And write down the word freedom. He said the federal government poured a lot of energy and effort into the Dawes Commission, but at the same time, it was very hard for Native and American governments to keep track of who was who. So how do they expect anybody to keep track of it? It has to be intuitive, family. It has to be intuitive. Y'all seeing this? It must be intuitive. It must be revealed as we're doing it now through inspiration, intuition, inner knowledge, and revelation.
Yeah.
Genesis 25, 21, and 23. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him. And Rebekah, again, representing what? The dominant trait, carrying the mitochondria DNA, conceived, and the children struggled together within her. And the Lord said unto her again, two nations are in thy womb, two genetically distinct people shall be separated. The one shall be genetically stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger. And Esau said unto his father, now this is just like, Nasi, it is akin to what Cain said to the Lord, his father, that the curse was too much for me. You got to bless me.
Right.
You
Right.
got to bless me. Right?
Right.
And
Right.
then we can extend that to Jacob, what? Wrestling with the angel till sunup and said, I'm not going to let you go till what? Till you bless me.
Right.
We see these same things repeated, but we never connected them.
Never connected.
And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling place, listen, shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of heaven from above, and by thy sword shall thy live.
Right.
So when you see the European making incursions into lands that are what? Fat and fruitful, and coming in with the sword, or it could be African nations that do the same thing. Are you all with me?
Yeah.
That is evidence not of a skin color, but a behavioral trait that would what? Follow the aberrant man. No matter what skin tone he would show up. Because what are we looking at, family? A mixed multitude.
Yeah.
That will not be distinguished primarily by skin tone. Moving on as we get ready to close. Europeans were dark skinned until 8,000 years ago. There's our roughly 6 to 7,000 year period again, because the aberrant man didn't show up in his final form, listen, of Caucasoid until about 6,000 years ago when that experiment was done. But is there evidence of aberrant behavior?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. Cain and Abel were brothers.
Right.
From what? One mother, one father. Esau and Jacob were brothers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
From one mother and one father. Are we seeing this?
Yeah.
It has been at the root of division and persecution for centuries. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, as being the fear of genetic annihilation, you will not, the fear of white genetic annihilation, you will not understand anything. It has been the root of division and persecution for centuries, but it seems that the white skin of most modern Europeans, see now they're making a very profound distinction. Modern Europeans. That is a political word. Modern humanity did not evolve in Europe at all. Now, what? Genetic research. And now see, this came out in 2015 after the world ended. And they're saying now genetic research has revealed that ancient European populations were dark skinned for far longer than had been originally thought. We've all been
Now,
subject to this deception, people. We've all been
yeah,
subject to this deception. Go ahead, Nasi.
that was what we was called the seed of Japheth, supposedly inheriting, Europe. But what come to me right now is now we understand why it's stated be fruitful and multiply. And the reason you're being fruitful and multiply was because the recessive seed was going to try to annihilate. So that had to be set in motion to continue to perpetuate the seed during the cycle of the flaw until that flaw would be what? Would
Remove.
be removed.
Corrected and removed. You're absolutely correct. Don't it make sense, y'all?
Oh, it all lines up.
All lines up.
All lines up.
Yeah.
Rather than lightning, listen, rather than lightning, as early humans did what? Migrated north from Africa. See, they migrate. Why they migrating? Because they are vagabonds from North Africa around 40,000 years ago. Due to lower levels of sunlight, these were aberrant individuals. They are always going to be characterized by their migratory movement or their wandering.
Wow.
Due to what? Lower levels of sunlight, and due to the fact that they were ostracized, that they were separated out by our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
These first Homo sapiens, look, retain their dark skin color. It is not just about appearance. If they were acting in an aberrant manner, family, what do you think happened to them? They were ostracized as well.
Right.
Our forefathers weren't color struck. If you exhibited aberrant behavioral characteristics and traits, guess what, buddy? You was out too.
That color thing is relatively new.
It is a new invention.
Mm-hmm.
But it has put us all under a spell. So we
Correct.
can't what? See the big picture up until this point. Now, very important, family. DNA analysis obtained from ancient human remains show that these farmers bred with dark-skinned hunter-gatherers. Cain was what?
Right.
Abel was what? Esau was what? Jacob
Yeah.
was what?
Yeah.
Come on now.
Y'all seeing the story unfold.
Yes, yes.
Like a book.
One of these genes became prevalent in the European population. This is not news to us that have a scientific, alchemical, metaphysical understanding of this Bible. Everybody else is doing it from the basis of a belief system, of a
Everybody.
position. We got to put all that stuff behind us.
See that again, Eitai.
Everyone else is looking at this thing up to this point from from the basis of a belief system, from the perspective of a belief system, from the perspective of an established doctrine that they're trying to connect the dots to. They're trying to steer the information to what? Support a doctrinal belief that they've accepted.
That's right.
Y'all got to know that I'm stating the truth. They have not up to this point, by and large, understood this thing from a scientific, genetic, metaphysical, alchemical, which is the true science, Malkiel, which is the higher science. They have not understood it from that level because they know nothing about metaphysics. They know nothing about alchemy. And they darn sure don't know about genetics. But as you incorporate these things into it, then what? The things that are in darkness come to light. It either is or it isn't. So, very important here, around the European skin color began to lighten. Okay, so around 5,800 years ago, that's within that 6,000 year period, correct?
Mm-hmm.
When Yakub did the procedure, the second gene, which makes skin color lighter still, also began to spread through the European populations. Yeah, that's right, because our ancestors did it. Very quickly as we close now. Everybody all right?
Yeah.
Y'all got about 10, 20, 15, 20 more minutes?
I'm okay
Okay.
with that. Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
okay with that.
All right. Give me about 20 more minutes, and I want to paint this picture as broadly and comprehensively as I can. The Lord also hath a controversy with Judah, and will punish Jacob according to his ways, according to his doings will he recompense him. He took his brother by the heel in the womb, and by his strength he had contended or contention with God. Genesis, that was Hosea 12 and 3. Genesis 32 and 28. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, listen, but Israel. It does not have this word for as a prince that is added in to confuse you.
Right. What did it say?
For thou hast Sarah with God and with man, and hast prevailed. The word Sarah is very important. For I'm sorry, where are we at?
Sarah.
Oh, Romans 9:6 to 13, and then 21 to 29. Listen, family, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel,
Yeah.
neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That is the dominant characteristic. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God. Do not look at the surface. But the children of the promise are counted for the seed. For this is the word of promise. At this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. This is going to knock y'all out now. And not only this, but when Rebecca, representing what? The feminine aspect with the mitochondrial DNA, dominant aspect, also had conceived by one, even our father Isaac. Again, dominant with dominant, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the children not being yet born, neither having done good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth, it was said, the elder shall serve the younger. And also, Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated. Let's look at this term, Sarah or Sarah. Now remember, up until a certain point, family, her name was Sarah, without the H on the end. Nasi, without the H, Yud He Vav He, without the feminine element, prominent,
Right.
without the H on the end.
Right.
Sarah corresponds to this scientific term. Y'all see how brilliant our ancestors were and are?
Hey,
Corresponds to this scientific term called Sarah, also the word Sarah in Hebrew, referring to the divine, noble mother of the nation. The nobility of Sarah has to do with the mitochondria DNA in the dominant type, in the dominant being. Are you all with me? Sarah
Yeah.
means noble woman. And it is said that the handmaid or the bondwoman would what? Not inherit with what?
Right.
The noble woman.
Right.
And the bondwoman, Nasik, had a son. And what was his character, Malkiel?
Ishmael.
He was a wild man.
Right. Right.
He was one that what? Demonstrated the recessive behavioral traits and mentality and lack of spirit, lack of soul, lack of what? Now see, neuromelanin. We don't know what
Right.
color he was. Wasn't important. But they described his behavior as what? A wild man. We're going to find out a barbarian, or what we like to say, a hillbilly. Sarah refers to subacute ruminal acidosis. Write that down. Sarah, subacute ruminal acidosis, or SLC24A5. I'll say that again.
I called him last night, never called back.
SLC2485. Sata. It means to contend or to have power, to be in possession of power. And that is that feminine power as it relates to the mother of the nation, or the chosen or elected mother of the nation. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
Being dominant and also carrying the mitochondrial DNA, which is so important. Looking at genomes from different populations all over the African continent, researchers found the genetic variants responsible for skin pigmentation, namely SLC24A5 or Sarah. That's where the power lies, family, in genetics. Geneticist Sarah Tishoff, ain't that funny? Her name was Sarah, was the senior author on this study. She said that in their paper, she and the colleagues show that mutations influencing light and dark skin, listen, have been around for a long time, even before the invention of the aberrant man, since before the origin of modern humans. So now see, I remember us having this conversation and you having a difficult time with accepting the standard rendition that most of our people take in terms of identifying Esau or Edom, like that.
Right.
And it was a reason for that. It was a reason why we struggled for it, because it was based on faulty information,
Yeah.
faulty teaching, or incomplete, let's say, and
That's something.
an incomplete perception and comprehension of the big picture.
Yeah.
So going on to the second part of Romans 9, hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make what? One vessel unto honor and the other vessel unto dishonor. And that's what exactly happened in the creation of the aberrant man.
That's exactly what happened.
Now, let's go forward as we close, as we bring this thing to a close. We're going to make some very powerful points here. For they are not all Israel, which are of Israel. This, Amaria, is a painting of three Chaldeans. Those are the ones standing to the left by the tree. How do they look?
Look like us.
They're brown skinned, correct? With afros.
Okay.
And then it says that the Chaldeans are with what? Captive Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people have noticed that when we see representations of Hebrews, whether in Kemet or in Greek or in Sumeria or whether they're captive all the time? Malkiel, have you noticed that, brother?
They captive everywhere, huh, Eitai?
They captive all the time. We as we close, we're gonna tell you why. Because they're aberrant. They're demonstrating aberrant behavior. And the children, Exodus 12, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses. Now listen to this, family. And they borrowed of the Egyptians jewelry of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment. Y'all got to look at that word. They stole that stuff. Or they took it by force. Now listen.
Yeah,
And
we ain't gonna give it back.
huh?
I said they didn't borrow it because they weren't going to give it back.
That's right. That's a wrong word. They strong arm that stuff on their way out. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required. They lent it to them. What was they? They want the scripture tells you that the Lord said they weren't never coming back there. Right?
Right. It could be lent.
Couldn't have lent it to them. They spoiled them. They stole that stuff from the Egyptians. And the children of Israel, listen, journeyed on Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot, that were men besides children, and a mixed multitude was there. That mixed multitude was the one that did the borrowing, them aberrant individuals. And probably when they ask them, where did you get this from? All this stuff, oh, we borrowed them. They lent it to us.
The average Hebrews, the average man there is the captive Hebrews.
Look, on Nehemiah, on that day, this is very important. On that day, they read the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that the Ammonite and Moabite should not come into the congregation of God forever. Why? because they met not the children of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them. They were an opposer, that he should curse them. Howbeit our God turned the curse into a blessing. Now listen to this very carefully. The first mention of the Ammonites in the Bible in Genesis 19, 37 and 38. It is stated that they descended from whom? Ben-Ami, a son of Lot, through what? Incest with his younger daughter. Ben-Ami literally means son of my people. After the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the daughters of Lot had sexual relations with their father. Look, this is an aberrant trait. An aberrant trait, resulting in Ammon and his half-brother Moab being conceived and born. This narrative has traditionally been considered literal fact, but is now generally interpreted as recording a gross popular irony by which the Israelites express their loathing for Moabites and Ammonites. It also shows you in clear fashion this idea of a mixed multitude, family. Look, a mixed multitude, just like Cain and Abel were brothers, Esau and Jacob were brothers from one mother. Shem, Ham, and Japheth were brothers. But it shows graphically the mixed multitude. Now, I'm going to ask you, look at the skin of Japheth and tell me, besides skin color, what you notice differently about his skin than the skin of Ham and Shem. Let me repeat it. Besides the tone and color of his skin, what do you see regarding his skin that is different than Ham and Shem?
Tattoo.
Yeah.
Or scarification, ritual scarification, to do what? Correct a flaw. Are y'all seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
Does it fit into the teachings and the framework that we have established? Do we know? Are we seeing this? We sounding confused now. We looking confused.
I'm clear.
All right, you clear? Amara, you clear?
Hey.
This is our overall framework now that we're seeing. Every time you see Yafet or light-skinned individuals, look at them. You see those tattoos or the scarification marks on there indicating that they were trying to someone, not maybe them themselves, but the dominant population was trying to cure something in them. Aberrant behavioral traits. By what? Using our science of ritual scarification. Isn't that what we said that our divine sisterhood did in real time, right? 400 years ago.
Dang.
The average wandering thug and plunderers.
This is the Shasu of Yahoo, as represented on the Egyptian walls. As we close, family, this is the aberrant, wandering thug plunderer that history has recorded. Not just the Bible, but we're syncretizing this with actual historic events. Every time almost you see them, they are captives, prisoners, or like this, getting that pocket beaten. The names Etaman may be Egyptian, Shasu, which originally meant those who move on foot. They wander. They migrate. They are immigrants. They cross over from the opposite side and cause trouble, raise hell. They bring the sword and along with it aberrant behavior. We are starting to see this spirit manifesting all over the planet, and especially in schools, daycare centers, theaters, and we've called it mass shootings. There is a spirit and energy that is taking over these individuals, and it is letting them know what is in store for them. If you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. If you got this land through genocide and mass slaughter, guess what? The chickens are coming home to roost. It's going to come back on your head.
That's right.
I'm going to try to get the book, The Nubian Agenda. Does anyone have it? And in there it states that as this new age dawns and this old age closes, that if you are a people population, group, tribe, nation, empire, etc., that has in its history genocide, mass murder, in other words, evidence that you have lived by the sword, you're going to be exterminated. The cosmos will not let you go on. We gave you evidence that within the next several decades, that these populations, by their own estimation and by their own measurements, are predicting what? Their extinction and annihilation from off the planet. And it will not be determined by skin color alone. The material world, Malkiel, is the world of Asaya. It's the realm of Asaya, and it is the realm of actions. And actions have as above, so below. What you bind on earth will be what? Bound in the cosmos. And what you loose on earth will be loosed against you or for you in the cosmos. Are you all with me?
Yep.
Be not deceived. Whatsoever a man soweth in the realm of Asaya, that shall he also reap. So these individuals, these aberrant individuals, that have migrated into peaceful land with the sword and caused mass genocide and extermination of populations, the same is going to be done to them on an energetic level. And we already see, and they already see, the evidence of this beginning. But as our scriptures tell us, it's going to be culminated in a short work. So it means those who move the foot, which again connects it to the word aberrant, which means wandering from the usual course. And again connects it to the word ebher, which means those that cross over from the opposite or other side. Aberrant also means differing somewhat from the group in which it is placed. And the distinguishing aspect, again, that we need to intuit, that we need to realize intuitively as well as intelligently, is the aberrant behavior of aberrant individuals, irrespective of skin color. Irrespective of skin color. Closing out, the word Yahoo, when capitalized, means a member of a race of brutes. In Swift's Gulliver's Travels, listen, who have the form and all the vices of a human. In other words, they were a humanoid or a kind of human. Their behavior is characterized as being boorish, crass, or stupid. If someone calls you a Yahoo, it is definitely an insult. Yahoos are thought to have very little education and culture. Melanin, neuromelanin gives you intelligence, inner intelligence, and makes you more civilized or cultured. People think of Yahoos as folks who were raised in a barn. Maybe literally. A Yahoo can also be called a bumpkin, a hayseed, a hick, a rube, a yokel, or a hillbilly. Hillbilly is instructive because we're going to understand that these aberrant individuals, when they wandered or migrated as a result of being ostracized and kicked out of the main group, they ended up where? In the mountains or the hills? In mountain regions or hill regions. Are you all with me?
Yeah.
So Jacob was described, family, as a plain man dwelling in tents. I'm going to show you.
Right.
That word plain man in Hebrew is tam ish, and it means complete, perfect, one who lacks nothing in physical, that is genetic strength.
What is that word, Tommy?
It's the word tam ish, meaning plain man. Tam ish. Tam is the word for plain, that they're translating as plain. But it
What
means,
number is that? Eitai, what number is that?
I don't know exactly what number it is. I neglected to put it down.
Okay, I
I
got
think
you.
it's 8551 though, because the root, no, it might be 8552. It might
Okay,
be H8552.
okay.
And it means a person that is properly melanated with neuromelanin that acts like a human being. Now watch, I'm
Wow.
going to show you a picture, and it says, now see, that he was a plain man doing what? Dwelling in tents.
Right.
Check him out.
Eitai.
Let me ask y'all now, have y'all seen any pictures of any Hebrews dwelling in tents? I'm going to challenge you to find me one. That's the Tom Ish Eber dwelling in tents.
Wow.
So I'm going to close right here. Now, family, we got so much more to discuss.
So much more.
This,
Eitai, before you go, please give me that definition of what a Hebrew was.
I certainly will. And I'll give it to you right now if you like.
Yeah, do it right now.
A Hebrew, traditionally from an ancestral name, Eber. Traditionally from an ancestral name, Eber, but probably literally one from the other side. Perhaps in reference to the River Euphrates. I'm going to show you exactly what happened using the River Euphrates, or perhaps simply signifying immigrant. Perhaps in reference to the River Euphrates, or perhaps simply signifying immigrant. From Eber, region on the other or opposite side. From Eber or Eber, region on the other or opposite side. The initial H was restored in English from the 16th century. The initial H was restored in English from the 16th century. As a noun from circa 1200 or the 12th century, meaning the Hebrew language. From the 12th century, meaning the Hebrew language. Late 14th century, in reference to persons, originally a biblical Jew or Israelite. Originally a biblical Jew or Israelite. Everybody got that?
Okay, you all sending notes out, but I just wanted to hear it, okay?
Now, I'm going to show you what happened at the Tower of Babel, all right? So that we tie this up all together on the map. On the map to the right, Amaria, where you see Babylon, right? It's toward the middle. It's toward the middle. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
And it's Shinar or Shinar. Now, this is where the setting of Genesis 11 is. And I'm going to find the information now, see, but it is said that in the building of the Tower of Babel, right, everyone was trying to do what? Get closer to their divinity. And Eber refused to do it.
Uh-huh.
And what happened was he was kicked out and he crossed the river Euphrates, which is right here. Can y'all see it in the other picture of the Fertile Crescent to the right? The river Euphrates right here. You see it, Amaria?
Hey.
So he left out of Babylon and he crossed the river Euphrates and went up here into the hills, the foothills of the Caucasus Mountain. And you can see he's up there with Japheth. Right under there is Eber, Peleg, Togarma, Tubal, right near the Caucasus Mountains. So he headed for the hills because he was a hillbilly. he had demonstrated through his behavior, and this is what we have to look at. We have to know these aberrant characteristics when we see them. And so with that, I'm going to end it here, and we'll do part 2 tomorrow. All right?